So we're delighted to put together today a significant agenda for you. I noticed just when I looked at the attendee list, we have a large number of incubation clients, both in person and online. We have some New Frontiers people, which is great as well. That's our entrepreneurship programs that we run here, funded by Enterprise Ireland in the iHub. We have a good few BioInnovate people, which is great, great opportunity there. And indeed, we have a few ATU staff and researchers who are particularly interested in the Medtech space and the software space, and indeed the sort of convergence of those two together. So I suppose let's look at the speakers initially, and then I'm going to say a few slides, and then I'll go back in and introduce the speakers one by one. So I want to thank Raymond Crosbie, Business Development Director for S3. That'll be our first speaker. I want to thank Gavin Corley, CTO for Bluedrop Medical, a client of the iHub. We'll say a few more words on that in a few minutes. And I want to thank Paul McCarthy, founder and CEO of Full Health Medical. There are three speakers today. I think we're going to have a very interesting update on the challenges, the issues, sort of some ideas as to help ye. And I think it'll be quite interesting because S3 will be able to give, if you like, an external vendor update on what's involved. And then we have two clients who've been there and done that. And I think that's important. I also want to say that we'll have some Q&A at the end of the three speakers. So you can use, you can send in your questions if you like, and Turlock will manage that at the end. And then we'll also have an opportunity for anyone that wants to have one-to-ones with Raymond afterwards. So there's I think an hour and a half slot there. And indeed, if anyone after the event is looking for any follow-up, all they have to do is email myself or email Turlock, and we'll put them in contact with the relevant people. I know as well today among the audience members here, I know we have Pádraig Costello, Business Development Manager in Lero, which as many of you would know is the National Software Development Research Centre. And when we come to Q&A, Pádraig, I'm going to give you a chance just to say a few words because I think it'll be interesting. And you might remind me if I forget it at that stage, okay? So look, just a couple of slides first. I want to just say ATU now has 4 innovation hubs. Traditionally, we had Galway and Mayo, so whenever I'd be talking about that in the past, it was the 2 hubs, and most of you would know those. But now there is a large hub in Sligo, and there's a large hub in Letterkenny. So ATU has 4 innovation hubs, quite significant because if you look at the total number of incubation units down along the west and northwest corridor, we'd have over 100 incubation units in total in ATU. Very significant, and we're doing quite a bit of work to let people understand what's available in those hubs, but critically also let people understand what's available in the research. So there's 3 Enterprise Ireland technology gateways in the ATU. Most of you are aware of the Medical Engineering Technologies one because almost every single client in the iHub has integrated with them in relation to R&D, prototyping, etc., building proof of concept models. And so that's here on campus, on the Galway campus. But because of the ATU, we also have called the PEM Centre, Precision Engineering Manufacturing Centre in Sligo. So if anyone wants any contacts there, just come back to us and we can send you the details. And we have a wiser gateway in Donegal. And indeed, that's to do with IoT technology and aerial design, which is actually interesting for this space. And you might remember last year we had the manager from Wiser doing a workshop here in the iHub, and it was quite interesting, and there was some follow-up engagement afterward with clients. Just to look at some success in funding in 2024, even though we're only starting 2024, I just want to give a big shout out to Timpany Medical. They were awarded 6.8 million in DTIF funding very recently, and that's to develop their Soloscope product, the world's first sterile, sustainable, panoramic endoscope, designed for enabling the circular economy for medical devices. A huge boost there, A lot of work goes into these DTIFs. In fact, that was DTIF 6. And just at my Christmas update, you might remember, we talked about 2 other companies, CranMed, who got, I think, 3.5 million, and Endowave, who got something like 5.4 million in the DTIF. So that's 3 actual DTIFs, you know, linked to the iHub, which is absolutely super. And we'd like to thank the people involved and to recognise the effort that goes into this. Also, just to say a word for Emma, Precision Sports Technology, most of you would know Emma. So they launched their platform, Kinetic IQ, really important update for them. They have, Emma was on the New Frontiers program previously, and she has just went into a larger incubation unit here in the iHub in Galway. So the platform will help to revolutionize the way individuals measure their exercise technique by providing objective analysis to maximizing athletic performance and rehabilitation outcomes, all in the palm of your hand, critically without any wearables. And that's very, very important. So it's quite innovative, quite disruptive technology, and well done to Emma and the team here. Finally, from me, just to give another shout out to an event we have on March the 8th. Most of you would be aware that it's International Women's Day. We're delighted to support that. And I know that Michelle is championing an event for that day, 10:30 here in the iHub. And look at all are welcome. You just scan the QR code there to register. So back to the main event of the day, and just back to the 3 speakers. So I want to thank Raymond again for taking the time to come to us, because it's very important to have someone like S3 that can come in to set the scene for this in relation to software development for medical device companies. So Raymond is the Business Development Director with S3. He has over 20 years experience in life sciences, clinical research, medical device manufacturing, and product development. He has held commercial and project management roles across multiple sectors, and he has delivered complex user-centric products and programs. Outside of work, Raymond enjoys living in the country life with his wonderful wife and 3 boys. He has a passion for old houses, fast horses, I wonder where he got that, loud music, and contact sports. So please give a round of applause to the people who are here for Raymond.
That's an unexpected introduction anyway, but Gavin, this one as well.
To see it on screen there.
Yeah.
Second up.
There you go. Okay. Good morning. Thank you very much for attending here today, and thanks to George, Turek, and Michelle for the invite to come and talk to you today. So my name is Raymond Crosbie. I work with S3 Connected Health. I suppose my own background, maybe to add to George, is I'm a biochemist, if you go back far enough, but I think I've pretty much forgotten all that at this stage. But I've worked in clinical trials and with the pharma industry in the early stages of my career, and then moved to the medical device dark side, and have worked in kind of manufacturing and product development ever since. And that's kind of, I suppose, I've pushed towards a kind of digital product development over time. So I suppose today I want to talk a little bit about how why digital health, why it's appropriate for medical devices, to give you some insight into maybe the development processes and things to consider, and what the future kind of holds in terms of the things we need to consider. And then I'll touch on a case study as well, just to give you some kind of real life insight as the challenges of developing quite a complex product that's connected in a hospital environment. So I suppose to there we go. So I suppose S3 Connected Health at a glance. So S3 Connected Health, I suppose if you go back far enough, it was originally a Philips company and was spun out from Philips back around the year 2000. They had 3 companies at the time, 2 of which they were in set-top TV box technology and in silicon chip software. They've both been divested since. So at the moment, we're now, I suppose we're now 100% healthcare or medical, evolving from what was originally a telehealth business where we were servicing the healthcare, direct to hospitals, direct to healthcare providers. And we've changed our focus now to be more focused on medical device companies and pharmaceutical companies in terms of helping them realize digital solutions. So that's, I suppose, our, who we interface with and who we work with. And I suppose my role is very much, the early stage engagement with those medtech and pharma companies, trying to understand what their needs are, what they're trying to achieve. And then we break that down into, what is a tangible solution and proposal for them. So I suppose we've kind of, a customer base of probably 30 plus companies, and that varies. I suppose it ranges from large multinational companies, I'll put up some of them in a few minutes, down to, I would say, the innovative scale-up company. We tend to work with companies when they've gone beyond that kind of feasibility, proof of principle stage, and they're moving more towards that commercial product development. I suppose at our core, we have a 250 people team, and at the core of that, we've got technology, but to be successful in digital health, we've had to wrap quite a number of services around that. And that comes from, I'd say, originally would start with your consulting group, their behavioral scientists, their digital health designers, their human factors engineers, and they're the people who try to understand at the human level what we're trying to achieve. And then also on the technical level, we have early stage technical consultants who will get that early look at what your system architecture is going to look like and what your technology stack might need to be. And then we have, quality and regulatory staff as well, who are, absolutely important in terms of delivering that regulated digital health solution. I suppose in our history, the most of what we would have done, up to a number of years ago, everything was bespoke. We rebuilt everything depending on what the client needed. And in that, we would have identified quite an amount of commonality in terms of the functionality. So we've built a digital health platform, which allows our customers to build a custom solution on top of what is a common backbone of software. We call that a finial. I'm not going to touch on that too much today, but I suppose that's the evolution of us as a company, moving from being entirely bespoke to something that's much more efficient in terms of a platform. So I suppose what are the type of projects that we work on? And I suppose our business is split between medical device and pharma companies. I suppose on the pharma side, first, we tend to operate digital health solutions. So we create and operate digital health solutions for pharma companies, and they can fall into either being a companion product or a companion digital health app for a single product, or that can be for multiple products or more complex disease conditions. And I suppose the integration there with medical device products tends to come in the form of drug delivery solutions. Predominantly, that digital health in drug delivery tends to be around injector pens, particularly for biologics. That's where the most value is. On the lower end, your connected inhalers, the probably drug value isn't there to substantiate the business proposition, but there are applications there as well. And then there's a combination of that digital therapeutic and behavioral change element in combination with that digital health services around managing patients and managing conditions within that pharma environment as well. I suppose when we move over onto the medical device side of things, I suppose we're using what are established technology stacks in terms of how we build and develop those solutions. And it's probably the same on the medical device side. On the medical device side, we're probably back further in the product development cycle. We're much more involved in elements of the hardware, the embedded software, and then into the software, and the software as a medical device solution as well. And the typical projects there are generally on those, therapy management, where it's a wearable or an implantable device around a particular patient, where they're moving from a hospital to that on-the-go or at-home environment, or you have that connected in-hospital type solutions, which is complex therapy delivery. And that we're seeing that transition of, moving from that, I would say, centralized care to regional care and even into the home. Probably a good example of that is at-home dialysis and how they apply connectivity to those devices to monitor and manage not only the patient, but also the machine itself, and how they, I would say, manage the logistics around the machine and commercialize that as well. Just a few of our clients, a good smattering of, I suppose, names that are familiar here in Galway as well, but there's a diversity there in terms of companies that are focused on maybe drug delivery like Ipsomed, companies like Inspire, who have a connected implantable device. I suppose neurostimulation, I suppose, is the term there. To interventional device companies, and there's a whole spectrum of companies there doing lots of different, I suppose, addressing lots of different needs across different therapeutic areas. So I suppose to start with a little bit about why is medical device, why should we be interested in digital health? And I suppose the agenda today, I've probably touched on it already. The first thing we're going to do is look at, that digital health medical device paradigm, and how that works. So I suppose the ambition is that we have a fully connected healthcare system, and that wherever care occurs, that we will have data flows that go vertically and horizontally, and we end up with a ubiquitous care model where, at the center is the patient. All physicians are able to access data and make good decisions based on what's happening right now with specific patients. I suppose the reality is a little bit different. I suppose if we take this, here as being a patient journey where we're understanding for a specific disease condition or a specific, specific treatment, where are the early points by which the patient is identified? Where do they enter that path? Where do they go through screening? Where do they go through diagnosis? Where do they go through pre-treatment, treatment, release, future monitoring? All these are in that, and they touch a lot of different healthcare settings in that way. So if we go from primary to secondary care, on-the-go health is a lot. I suppose it's a newer piece, and then healthcare home again is a little newer piece. So this is much the traditional. This is what's emerged, and I suppose within them all, they all have that vertical activity of data. Generally speaking, we probably still have people in primary care who are using paper notes and different things, but we're seeing a generalized trend towards it. So within that, we'll have primary care. They have their devices and applications and healthcare systems. And I suppose there is a vertical piece there in terms of that data flow within that own environment. But unfortunately, I suppose they're quite siloed, and you don't have that horizontal transfer of data either between hospital systems at the device level, or down to the physician level as to how that actually occurs and happens. So there's a lot of things that are costly in there, and there's a lot of things that can maybe put patient safety at risk, cause suboptimal treatment or inexpensive treatment as well. So I suppose it's trying to understand, okay, how can we, if we have better data flows there, what are the things that we can do a little bit better? And understanding, through that patient journey and through that the life cycle of care, or that continuum of care, we can start by better identification, early identification of patients by doing EHR searches, being able to search for certain things, determine what biomarkers are going to give you early indication, early intervene with telemedicine or telehealth, so that we have preventative measures happening to stop things exacerbating, device support and maintenance. When we get into the physician and clinician level, there's a lot of opportunity there by which we can do decision support, We can manage better outcomes of patients by personalizing medications and treatments for specific and individual patients. And then, as we push through, then you're looking at how people adhere. We can manage and monitor that through digital intervention. And then, I suppose the end one there is we can get that early release from that clinical environment, which is, I suppose, the most expensive care that they have, to that remote and monitored hospital at home scenario. So I suppose when we look at what we can do around the device, there's a number of things we can do, and we'll touch into what this means at the requirements level and at the user level as well. So typically when companies are considering a digital health solution or a data-rich solution, these are the things they're trying to address. So generally the operational excellence side of things, and this kind of falls outside of that I would say regulated solution. This is the data solution. This is the business operations logistics side of things. Where if we have a complex medical device in hospital, we can look at how we manage predictive maintenance, how we manage supply chain. We can do just-in-time delivery of maybe the consumables around that device. We can track that device within the clinical environment. We can understand its usage. We can understand different parameters around pre-treatment, post-treatment. We can understand the user behaviors as well. So then when we move up, I suppose, into how we interface with the patient and the clinician, there's lots more opportunities there to make sure we've trained people well. We've delivered a de-risk device from a usability perspective. We can monitor the outcome. We can understand how that clinical performance is happening, and we can provide clinical decision support with that. And then in terms of moving up in the chain and into that bigger ecosystem, you're looking at how you can deliver connected care. We're looking at that clinical workflow management, not only within the confines of the hospital environment, but also in the broader expanse of that. And that's care coordination out hospital to home or hospital to I suppose a regional clinic as such. So I suppose to move along and to take those elements of what we're trying to achieve, these are all going to come back in terms of understanding what our requirements are. And those requirements translate into things like how do we operate and build that machine? What's the outcomes and the evidence we need to generate there? Things like interoperability, user experience, data privacy, cybersecurity, something that's being, I would say, strengthened a lot over the last, probably year, particularly on the FDA side. Hardware connectivity, and then your software as a medical device solutions as well. So these are all the, I suppose, key considerations as we try to build out and think about what our digital health solution is going to be. So when we embark on that journey of creating that digital health solution, we're going to start in this concept design and definition, and that's your unregulated element. This is where you're trying to understand, what my business strategy is, how that impacts the clinical workflow, and who are my user types, who are my stakeholders. You're trying to really understand and define that, and you're getting into that, I would say, early prototyping and understanding what solution that looks like. You may have an overarching or a simplified architecture as to what that means. Then you move across into that development and validation, and where you're bringing forward your solution development requirements are being more well defined, and you're bringing things forward into development, the validation, and then from that validation, you're going to start to build your technical product as well. So I suppose this process is quite dynamic in terms of the solution and the context in which you're building your digital health solution. Some can be quite simple and quite straightforward. Others could be much more vast in terms of maybe integration, cybersecurity requirements. And I suppose it probably all comes back to intended use as well, in terms of the classification of device you're working in and the risk management elements around that. And I suppose the last bit then is where you're operating and delivering that device in the clinical environment. I would say if you take I suppose a traditional medical device company, very much orientated towards building products, selling a product, and almost leaving the customer with it. There may be some level of service agreement with that. What digital health does, it probably makes that company think and transform to becoming much more service orientated in terms of the data delivery and the management of that product in the field. That can also allow for a change in business model. The case study that I'll talk about, that company, they had I suppose their original business model was that we had a capital sale, and we went from that capital sale into selling consumables over time. Having a digital health solution allowed them to do a bill per minute, so that they were able to pay for actual usage. Now, that allowed them to become much more accessible to the hospital because they removed that capital cost up front, but they had I suppose a higher bill per minute over time. They also owned all their own equipment and machines, so it meant that they were able to manage and have machine availability under their control and not under the control of the hospitals and the technicians and the people who were managing that internally. So they had a lot more responsibility for that device because they were able to manage and track and know what that machine was actually doing. So I suppose one of the biggest aspects in terms of building that software as a medical device, bringing that forward, is to understand the quality system that's needed for that. So, there's typical, your ISO 13485 and 27001 are probably the two standard, medical device and data standards that are out there. But there's lots of other ones as well, around usability, cybersecurity that are applicable. And generally, I suppose how we think about things is we start with user need. And when, this is, probably, as I've said, it sits outside of that quality management system. But as you bring that forward and you start to define that more, you start to understand use cases, what your functional and non-functional system requirements are, and you're applying risk management. From those, I suppose, requirements, the ability to bring those requirements forward and track them into, what is the development of the system, from the architecture and the hardware and the software elements of that, but also building that testing that's going to validate that system. And I suppose the key piece is to understand risk management at every stage. So as you bring that forward to development and bring the test, that's going to bring you out into what the deliverables are, and you start to understand what your validation is like, what your technical file is going to contain at that point. For us, I suppose our internal validator tools, Jira and VR, tend to be the main ones in which we manage and control documentation within that. We could do a 2-hour presentation on that document management piece, but we won't do that today. I suppose what we've, the things that we see that have changed a lot in terms of that software development piece, one of the major pieces has been the requirement from cybersecurity, and that the regulatory bodies are really pushing for this to be a core part of the development process. So in 23, we would have had quite a number of engagements with the FDA around a number of products as they came forward, for approval. And I think it was in September, the FDA essentially made law some of the requirements around cybersecurity. I suppose the core points of that were that you had to have cybersecurity by design, that it was, core to have that as part of that, from your, day one of your development. They also you had to make sure that you, as part of your pre-submission, you provided your software bill of materials as part of that, and that your threat model and defining the boundaries around that were very clearly orientated. I suppose they also want to see that we're not just doing cybersecurity in terms of that development processes. They also want to see your plan for managing that device in the field. So that monitoring and updates being a very critical part of what the FDA are now looking for. They want to see that you've got a dynamic security policy, not something that's static in terms of, right here and right now, but how we're going to manage this in the future. Now, probably the biggest cybersecurity risk right now at the moment is probably not the devices that are coming on the market. It's those legacy devices and how companies are going to manage those. So we're probably going to see either a lot of patching of those devices, or we're going to see them removed from the market because the business case isn't there to manage that. So So yeah, so cybersecurity again, there's quite a process there, but I suppose the message is that it's an ongoing cycle. It goes throughout the development process and operation. So quite a bit of detail in there, but it's certainly I suppose from a CE mark perspective, there's more guidance expected, I think around March, April time in terms of an update in legislation, and we'll start to see in MDR and in the ISO 13485, they're going to start to fill gaps in there around cybersecurity as well. I suppose no digital health discussion or talk would be complete without a little touch on AI. So I suppose from a data science perspective, that's pretty well defined within the existing regulations, but we're starting to see a lot more new regulations, particularly specific to AI. In the US, use of AI Act came in October last year. If you're following the news, you would have seen that the EU AI Act was also kind of finalized in December. There was a lot of late night discussions and talks. So what's going to happen now is that's going to be translated down into the medical device side of things. I would say with respect to AI for other industries, they're probably going to have a little bit of fear of it. In the medical device industry, probably within pharma as well, it's going to be a risk-based assessment. So it's going to follow something that's generally within medical devices anyway. So that process is going to be somewhat similar. So I'd say don't be afraid of it in terms of what's coming. I suppose just to give you a little way to think about AI, there's probably in medical device development, there's probably three categories, it's probably more, but if you think of the most high risk is where AI is part of the product. So if you're using AI as part of your decision-making process, if you're going to use that as part of your physician decision-making, that's going to be the highest risk piece. So the highest, risk of regulatory standards around that. The current AI products that are on the market, most of them are in image processing, so around radiology. So that's where most of the approved AI products are right now. They're image analysis. They're assisting those radiologists or physicians to understand images and to see what's there or what's not there. The second one will be if we're using AI to write the code, how do we manage that? So that's really a validated tool as part of the development process. And the third one is then when AI is used for documentation creation. So if you're using AI as a tool to build your documentation, again, it's about validating the tool in the system, but it's not something that's going to have a high level of risk around it generally. Yeah, and the last one, just a little bit on interoperability. I think we have probably, the next slide on that. I suppose we're seeing a lot more standardization in terms of interoperability and integration, adherence to like the standard protocols like HL7 and FHIR in terms of, so this is how either devices can talk to each other, or we're having one-way or two-way exchanges back with the patient records. So interoperability is going to be I suppose a big requirement for medical device companies. It's a huge element for adoption, particularly for clinicians working within an EHR. If you're asking them to log into a separate system or to find a portion within their own EHR, that's a more efficient move for them. So we would see that as being kind of core. But it goes back into payers and policymakers as well in terms of how data is translated. We can get into anonymized and pseudo-anonymized data, but that's a whole other day's questions. I suppose a very quick touch, if I have 1 minute. So very quick case study. So we've worked with a company on a neonatal gas delivery system, I would say, not device, multiple pieces of it. We could break the project into 3 pieces. One was the device design and development, the software, the embedded firmware that went onto that, making that design, making that. The other one was the integration with the hospital IT and their own business systems, the story around how they changed their business model, and then managing the firmware at factory level and how it's brought out into a service piece. So I suppose just to focus on a little bit of the stakeholder need, what were they trying to do? And these were kind of the important points. So they were trying to understand that drug consumption that allowed them to optimize their supply chain. This was valuable for the medical device company and the hospital. The device status, this is optimizing device maintenance and doing predictive analytics on the device to make sure that we're maintaining and managing that device well. So benefit the medical device company. understanding the user activity, how's the device set up, what are the parameters around that? Is the treatment optimized for that patient parameter? Very valuable for the hospital and healthcare professional. Device locations, so tracking that device within the clinic environment, knowing where it is, knowing what the status of it is, that promoted efficiency in the hospital. And then device usage, that was the business model that I spoke of earlier, moving to that, I'd say, basically treatment as a service rather than that capital expense. Relating to the connectivity, lots of challenges in terms of the environment, in terms of getting that connectivity in there. You'll be surprised if you go to connect into a hospital environment, a lot of them just say no. So they had to find ways of understanding the clinic environment, how we can transmit data out of there. A lot of storage locations were difficult for wireless transmission, poor cellular coverage in the US, and then you had the general legal elements around GDPR and various other elements that made it more challenging there. So all that would have translated into understanding what the data requirements were and pushing that out into what physical elements of what you need. I suppose part of that project was understanding, doing field work in the hospitals, understanding where connectivity was possible. We had a team that did work in 60 hospitals in the US to try and understand that. We had issues in one particular area of a hospital. It was a former radiology department. It had lead line walls. Nothing could get out, so we had to manage the connectivity around that piece. So kind of interesting things. But I suppose what we ended up was a very diverse connectivity framework, where we had different routes by which data could be taken from that clinical environment. So you're starting with the device level. You may move to a field gateway, which is essentially a central hub within the hospital, and that communicated. I suppose it allowed you access to cellular network. Some devices had direct cellular connections, so they could connect directly to a cellular tower. Others were going through a hospital information system, all getting towards, I suppose, that IoT hub into your data and device management data lake there. And then that feeds into all these, from the business system side of things to clinical elements. Then having that back integration back into the hospital environment then as well, in terms of putting that data back in. So you can see it's, there's quite a bit of flexibility built within a system there, but understanding, I suppose, that getting the data from the device is probably the first critical thing that you do. Once you can get that out, then it's really, you're into building that digital health solution, and that becomes the somewhat easier bit. So I think that's, I suppose, the last bit. What does the future hold? There's lots of opportunities across that clinical care pathway for digital health. Use medical device companies the opportunity to give a diversified or different product. I suppose the digital health is going to be a reality. I suppose it's understanding how you interact and define with that. I suppose the biggest thing here is companies have to become digitally aware. They probably have to develop new business models, slightly different culture of being more agile to be able to manage digital and understand that it's an active product and it's a service. There's even talk of having predetermined change orders as to how you manage updates of your software over time. And then I suppose be prepared for regulatory changes, particularly around cybersecurity, AI integration. They're all things that are going to become much more standardized. I was on to Paul earlier about integration. In the US, integration is relatively standard in that you've got Epic and Cerner as two EHR systems. In Europe, it's the Wild West variety of EHRs. So gives you a much greater challenge in terms of building a robust system that can integrate more readily. So anyway, that's it. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Raymond. You covered a lot there in 20 minutes or so, and I know we're only touching the iceberg here, but it is important to give you an idea, and it sort of opens up the door. And indeed, just to remind people that Raymond is available afterwards for any questions, and for anyone that's online, if you have any, just email some details, and we might be able to get them as well answered for you. So. Just Raymond covered a whole load of items there. I mean, started off with talking about the companion app and the hardware and the therapy management, and then looked at the new reality for the delivery of care and indeed the evolving continuum of care and the whole move from the hospital to the home. So he talked again about the requirements for connected medical devices and the different stages involved, which was quite interesting, and the process and the validation tools for that. And then looked at some of the big changes: cybersecurity, AI, interoperability. Wow, even them three alone trying to manage that in the development of your device. And then he finished off the whole lot with a case study, which is great. So that gives us a really good introduction to the next client. And I want to thank Gavin, Chief Technical Officer in Bluedrop Medical, for coming along today and doing the talk. Most of you will be aware that Bluedrop Medical is in the space of preventing diabetic foot ulcers. They have been with us for quite a number of years, had a HQ unit here and an R&D unit. They have raised multi-million euro over many, many different rounds. It's a great example to look at. And they moved out, I suppose, about 18 months ago, and they're in Ballybrit Business Park. Will you give a big round of applause to Gavin, please?
Thanks, George, for the lovely introduction. So my name's Gavin. So I'm the CTO at Bluedrop Medical, as George mentioned, and Raymond's talk actually resonated very, very well with our experience to date. So a really great overview in terms of the types of things that you'll tend to look at. Could I ask, are people moving from, looking mainly at coming from software and moving into medical devices, or have been in traditional medical devices and are now starting to look at integrating software into their products here? Maybe a show of hands. Is there anybody heavily on the software side? Yeah. And then anybody heavily on the medical side? Okay, very good. All right. So the standards and the sort of technology that you're looking at and the regulations can look very overwhelming. I would say as you get down into it, like anything in medical devices, as you're pulling the standards and you're starting to work within the processes, it starts to just, flow and evolve quite nicely in terms of what the core is of what you really need to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drill down into our specific experience. I'll touch on some of the things that Raymond was talking about, but my experience of building a software development team and process on a greenfield site. So when I started in Bluedrop, we had a CEO, a COO, and I was a CTO. There was no development team. We had an idea for what we wanted to do and some rough prototypes. We knew that there was a very good opportunity to help prevent amputations. But essentially, we had to build everything from the ground up. And, we started in here, it's probably around 2016, George. And in a small lab, there was 3 of us there, and we just grew the team out. So between contractors and our permanent hires, we're probably closer to 40 now in terms of development teams and everybody else that's working. And so I look after R&D. Bluedrop for a long time was very heavily stacked in R&D, and everyone was really involved in it. So I'll talk you through our experiences. So this is our product. This is called the One-Step device after a rebrand. So for years our project name was the Delta Foot Scanner. The DFS used to refer to it as. So essentially what we have is a product that performs visual and thermal inspections on patients' feet to prevent amputations. So if you have diabetes and an advanced form of it, you'll essentially get peripheral neuropathy, where you won't feel something like a tack in your foot. And so you lose this protective sensation. Again, due to poor circulation in your feet and diabetes, a small cut can evolve into a large ulcer, which leads to an amputation. And for patients that have had these types of DFUs, diabetic foot ulcers, previously, they're very, very high risk of recurring ulcers and an amputation. So it's a constant need to inspect the feet, one, to see are there signs of inflammation through thermal inspection, but also to see have they stood on something that's going to damage their feet, which is very, very common. And so visual inspection is a core part of that. So we our product has launched in the US. We're shipping these units out to hospital systems throughout the US at the moment. And like Raymond was saying, you know, our experience is we're both a medical device manufacturer, but we provide a monitoring service. So we have to build a product, ship the product to patients, but then also provide all of the monitoring for those patients, manage the inventory of devices in their homes. So we need to be able to keep an eye on the devices as they spend, you know, 2 to 3 years out in patients' homes. And so our business grows kind of, you know, much further beyond just designing a device. I mean, that's where we start, but you have to think about really the data flows, as Raymond was saying, is going to be your business. So our business is really about performing inspections, understanding where issues are, and then surfacing the data to relevant stakeholders. So the types of software that we deal with, as well as doing the hardware design for the product, we're very heavily involved in numerous types of software development projects. So our device runs embedded firmware that has, you know, specific algorithms to help with the monitoring. That data gets transmitted along with image data back to our monitoring backend. So we've got a web interface for performing inspections, for our clinicians to perform inspections, do thermal and visual inspections. And then as that data is coming in, if you can imagine from hundreds of units, we need to automate, build dashboards, and do a lot of data science around where are there signals that we need to pay attention to? Is there an issue? How do we follow up quickly and efficiently with these patients? So you get into, you know, manufacturing tools to build the products. So we develop our own manufacturing firmware. 70% of our manufacturing steps, because we've developed a unique sensor, are bespoke and developed by Bluedrop. So our development teams build the manufacturing line. We design the firmware, design the monitoring software. We have AI tools that operate on top of our image data and other data. And then on the operations side, we also can develop business process tools and integrations. So if somebody spots an issue and if they follow up with a patient, how do you manage those workflows, right? So having a software team where you've got a stream of data coming through, you'll find that you'll have a use for them at all steps in the cycle. It becomes really, really critical. And you're always looking at data security, accuracy, automation, almost at every step of the way, because we're still a relatively small team for the scale of things that we're doing. And that's really the big challenge. So I'll talk kind of about 4 main areas. I'll just touch on standards. Raymond spoke about them, but just kind of if you're starting today and you're looking to build a software development process, be it with an external partner, and I'd recommend if you have an external partner that they're sitting with you, they're almost like a team extension type setup rather than try and hand them off a development project and not pay too much attention to it. There's too many opportunities for kind of success and failure in software development. And so it's something you have to keep really, really close as you're building your organization, but also designing your products. So the main thing is, you know, what class of device are you? So is it software as a medical device, a standalone software, or like us, is it system components? So have you got an overarching system that's going to take scans, you know, send them back to some back-end software, provide a monitoring service, and all of that comes under a single kind of system type classification. And that will dictate really the types of things that you need to pay attention to throughout your system, because you'll inherit from that system classification as you go down. So that's, you know, that'll be common knowledge to anybody working in medical devices. The software risk classification and kind of the core development standard for developing software is 62304, IEC 62304. There's nothing in this that isn't best practice or stuff that you really should be doing anyway if you're developing software. So our approach when we started was to say, well, Class C is very high risk. If it's going into a patient, it's sort of, you know, mission critical type software. A and B are, you know, medium and lower risk. We opted for B classification, even though our product is a low risk product, right? It's, you know, in terms of its use case, it's very like a weighing scales. The information isn't time critical, but we said, look, what's being advocated here with the B classification is very good practice. It means that you're specifying your architectures, you're working through a consistent design cycle that we should be paying attention to anyway. So, you know, we didn't let the tail wag the dog. We said, let's do the things that will result in a robust product. We'll rate ourselves as B. And we reviewed that then as the product evolved and our understanding of where we might fit evolved. And ultimately, we landed on A, but we had done everything we needed to do to be B classified, and it's not too much of a stretch for us to receive a C classification, though that wouldn't really be on the card. So it forced us into having very good organization, follow best practice, and I think that's a critical thing. Is don't do these things because the regulations tell you to. You have to comply with them at a minimum, but often you need to do more just to have a quality product, right, and to avoid frustration. So be workflow led, but standards compliant, right? And often, good workflows will drive you to do better things. So the key process from 62304, there's development, maintenance, risk management, configuration management, and then problem resolution. And the FDA, I'm sure you've seen it, have a very, very good digital health center of excellence. So everything really you need to know about if you're in the US market, which is where we are, is really contained there. And that's grown and kind of matured over the years. If you're developing an AI product, all the 510K submissions are available. They have a very good listing of what's been approved, what needs to be in the pre-subs are there. It's really, really, it couldn't be easier in terms of a training ground for just understanding what's needed. So this is the kind of guidance on what's encompassed in 62304. Software risk management is just very aligned. We use our normal ISO 14971 approach, and we layer a few things like threat modeling on top of that. There's nothing, particularly challenging in it. Configuration management and software problem resolution, incident handling, how do you deal with issues in the field? Very cut and dry, and you can evolve those as you go. I think the main thing in terms of structuring your process is that kind of line in the middle here on development planning. And if you look at any one of those elements, again, it's all kind of common knowledge. It's something that no development team should be avoiding, right? Everything, are you architecting it? Have you got good requirements? So 62304 is your core. And then there's a couple of other standards. Again, Raymond touched on these more comprehensively than me, but for the AI, there's what they call good machine learning practice, which is sort of a loose guidance that says here's some of the things that you should do while they're tightening up maybe what might be required in a pre-sub. There's nothing huge in that. I very much agree with Raymond's assessment, which is if you're already in medical devices, you're probably doing the same classes of activities like managing risk, managing your data. So it's just about ensuring that you're aligned with those. AI directive is there. There's alignment with the MDR, and again, I'd agree with that. We're probably going to see a layering of some of the things that are already being done. Cybersecurity is huge, and we've seen that grow from since we started in 2016. And we were lucky we had a team that kind of followed best practice before a lot of the current regulations kicked in. We already had all of the controls in place. So I think that's one that's huge. I think the standards generally in terms of what's expected are already there in other industries. So we've largely just borrowed best practice from the software industry and applied that here. And that tends to be what's happening. And then information security is a massive one as well, right? So when I think of cybersecurity, they do overlap, but cybersecurity is, to me, as a medical device manufacturer, you're really looking at, am I encrypting my data? What types of product controls do I need to decompose down into, cybersecurity controls do I need to decompose down into my product? Whereas information security is very much like almost like a quality management system in that it touches all aspects of the business, including your product development, and it's very significant. So I would say, 27,001, you can think of that as 13485. If you're doing business in the US, and you've got a hospital system that you want to sign up as a customer, one of the first things they're going to do is an information security audit, right? They're not going to look at your technical file. They're going to say, how secure are you? Can I trust you to handle my data? It's massive. So that's one I would say that you can align. There's a lot of very good kind of third-party companies out there, but information security and cybersecurity are probably the two biggest areas we're seeing at the moment in terms of being absolute requirements. Particularly as you move from this, I'm selling a device, to it's now data. And when it's data, you have to make sure it's secure. You have to understand where it's going to flow throughout your business. So I think that's a huge one. So I actually just wanted to get into tactics on software workflows, because this is where I spent a lot of my time trying. We think we have a very good process in Bluedrop with a relatively small team. We've structured it in an agile way. So just to talk about that. So you could look at these standards all day and kind of get carried away with them, right? And then let the tail wag the dog. You'll do everything the standards requires, but you've got a process that actually you can't work with, or it's very inflexible. You have to be able to adapt very, very quickly. So we set kind of a lighthouse milestone or goal of being able to, develop and push a full product release in a month as a medical device company. So that means you're not waiting 6 months for QA test somewhere in, Poland or wherever else to get the reports back to you. It means that your tests now have to be automated. You have to make sure you have good test coverage, because if stuff breaks, you're not going to be able to do that in a month. You have to have multiple test environments as you're working your way through. So that target of a quick release for us drove everything. How do you build your company, your review process, all of your compliance requirements into a process that would allow you to start with nothing and in a month release into production. So again, that's done in any big tech company developing software. Some of those are doing nightly builds, nightly releases. It's a problem that's been solved in other industries. It was very alien at the time in medical devices to be doing that, because the assumption is that, well, we need a stage gate review. We need to pull in people to do this. And so the only way you can do it is that if you integrate a compliance function on your development team, and you heavily use automated processes, and you can also decompose your approvals. So in medical devices, typically you look at a waterfall model that says, when everything is ready, we'll do our design verification review, or we might do several of them, but essentially you're batching work. For this approach, what you need to be able to do is take one requirement at a time and say, all right, if we're doing an incremental build here, can we work that the whole way through and deploy to production, and do that in a way where it doesn't take a very long time? And so what you have to then do is cut the overhead of releasing, right? So it can't take long to review. It can't be a big effort to find bugs. You have to be able to address that up front. And so I think that's key to us being agile and robust enough to be able to stay on top of, things that might be changes in the market requirements or product requirements or customer asks that are coming in. And so we're always trying to get better at that. I would say we're probably on a quarterly release schedule at the moment. And we'll try and pull that down. We're going to try and pull that down to monthly. So I think the main thing to do is, you want to leverage application lifecycle management tools. Raymond touched on a couple of them. We use one called Spire Team that's very good. So that means you're getting away from these long design input tracker Excel documents, and you're actually moving into tools that make a lot more sense. So you can have your test cases in there, you can do risk assessments in there, you can do requirements in there, and you can look at one at a time, get all of your approvals done on an individual level, and not be dealing with this big bang. We need all of requirements ready to go, and away we go. So what we did is we took that approach and we said, we'll start with our workflows. We'll build those first, so make sure we're developing software to best practice. We layer our standards into that process, and we'll come up with development phases in a cycle that kind of makes sense for us. So we're an agile company. We spend a good bit of time refining how it is that we're running our agile projects, but essentially we ended up with sort of release phases like this. So, we do traditional planning for releases. So, what do we want to deliver over the course of the year? Then we're into 2-week sprints, delivering a feature every sprint in our internal environments. And then we're pushing those through out to production. And at each of these phases, we've just said, well, here are the deliverables that we need from a compliance point of view, from a software point of view. We automate our reporting, and then away we go. So decompose the whole the workflow down into a series of phases, roles, deliverables. And if we look at sprint development specifically, we end up with something like this, which is, a workflow from start to finish for a requirement and test case to get a single piece of work verified, right? So this would be like, running through your design concept phase all the way through to DV in 2 weeks. So for small features. And so roles identified. So we did that. And essentially our process kind of grew from that. So we have a software development plan kind of hinged around this in terms of development. And we have this definition of ready and definition of done. So there's a lot for any one person to remember for all of these things. So we heavily use these definition of ready and definition of done checklists so that you can just, have everything lined up. When definition of ready means you're ready to start working. So if you have to have requirements approved, they're approved at that point. If you need to have architecture diagrams ready, they're done at that point. And so we've about 18 items in our definition of ready or definition of done gates. And then as we go through to the end, the definition of done review is like a DV review. Have we verified everything? Are requirements clear and correct? Are there any emerging requirements, which often happens in software, that we now need to factor in for the next phase? And so that's how to just kind of decompose everything down into an individual, you know, at a unit level for a given requirement, we know we're good. And it kind of compounds from there. You get faster at working stuff through from there. So the kind of key takeaways in terms of structuring the development process for us is really you want to match your procedure to comply with 62304. But the development plan should really be tailored to kind of the product and the team workflows and cadence. And depending on who you're using, an external development team might have a lot of experience working a certain way. If that's what is most efficient, you should run with that if you're planning to use them in the long term, and just ensure then that there's checks in place to make sure that they're 324 compliant. 62304 compliant. You want to break down each phase into specific roles and responsibilities, deliverables, approvals, and sequencing. So you want to have a good detailed process flow that everyone gets, and then leverage agile concepts and software frameworks to minimize the cognitive load. So again, like looking at all the standards, anybody would be overwhelmed by them. So what you do is you load the process with that and do things like definition of done, definition of ready. And then, you know, we say that it's this sort of crawl, walk, run in everything in Bluedrop. We see it all the time. If you're doing something new, you don't know what you're doing until you've done it 3 times, constantly. So a process needs time to incubate. Teams need time to incubate. It takes a little bit of time to kind of find their feet. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater because it's a little bit slow the first time around, right? They need the space and the time to kind of learn and understand then what's working for them and not what's not working. And Agile has sort of a good framework for understanding that. Just some very quick tools. So, you know, Agile, if I can't see any other way, it's been my experience, but I couldn't see any other way to do this without leveraging Agile frameworks to be that robust, to be able to respond to change quickly. There's a lot of different flavors of it. So depending on where you are and the nature of your product, it's really, you have to tailor it to the team, right? It's not about beating them over the head with the framework. It's about finding out what works. But the sort of general intent that we found is you want to have very tight feedback loops in terms of what's working well and what's not working well. You want to have time to be able to fix processes. And then you want a team that's planning themselves, right? So at an individual level, everybody should be clear on the goal, and you don't want to have one project manager that's doing all the planning work that's decoupled from the day-to-day of what people are doing. It's a planning culture that you're trying to evolve at an individual level, and you're just feeding that back up, and that improves the coordination. You could spend hours talking about Agile. I won't. We had in our first team, there was 5 of us. We developed it as an Agile team. Our development process evolved out of that in about 3 months. We still use it today. It's probably one of the best things we've done. There's compounding gains with that because we can release very, very quickly. So you get much more features out. You tend to build the right thing. We automated all of our software tests. So our software tests, we run them nightly. Full regression testing, full verification on our software. On our firmware, we've about 70% automated test coverage. That's not something that was done at the time. We invented an automated test framework for testing firmware running on a hardware device. That means we can fully verify any new firmware release in a day and a half. We use ALM tool tracing. So again, Spire team, this breaking down requirements into test cases. So this is an example of what that looks like. There's a bunch of them, like JAMA is another one. I spent a lot of time trying to understand what tool we would use. Prior to that, I'd spent 3 months refining design input documents and doing traceability, and nothing was moving other than me developing reports. So I said we'd never do that again, and Spire team is a great tool for that. For anyone developing software, there's a software production line that you're going to need. Ideally, it's automated. It can run all of your tests. The area is continuous integration and continuous development. That is absolutely essential, right? If you're to move fast and continue to build, you're going to want to have that capability in place. And that will generate then automated reporting and testing. So someone can commit their code up, it does the work and tells you you've got an issue or everything else is good, or everything is good to go. So there's a I don't know if people are familiar with boardly mapping, right? If you're working in technologies as a strategic tool, it's very helpful, I found. So essentially, the long and short of it is that you've got value chain. Where is your technology or the thing you're working on visible in your value chain? So, or do our customers see your back-end software interface? Actually, in our case, they don't. And then, you know, is it very new? Is it a custom product? So if you're working early R&D, you're on this side. If it's commodity and it's been done before and solved before, it's kind of further over. So what you want to do is you essentially want to try and move those components that are kind of down and to the right. That's the stuff you can delegate out to somebody else, right? They're not that visible. It's been solved. It's a problem that's been solved. You don't need to reinvest in it. It's probably low risk. So why are you doing it? In my experience with software, all of our software, all of it's in-house at the moment. And it means that we've been able to automate faster, understand where the issues are, but also leverage things that are done from our web software team into firmware as well. So this is a way of mapping the areas that you should invest in and keep close to you, high risk areas. And if you are bringing in somebody external, keep them very, very close. It's that collaborative or team extension, right? But software is always complex. It's always fast moving and always needs a lot of maintenance. Sorry, I'm over a little bit on time. I just speak very briefly on domains and norms. So when this might be familiar to a few people, when you bring someone from a software industry into medical devices, which is what we've done, and you start layering up regulations, and you've got maybe mechanical design engineers or manufacturing engineers, all of whom are really, really good in their own areas, you're going to find them arguing about stuff because they've got different norms, right? This is human nature. So I see it a lot. It actually can create a lot of opportunities if you hone in on it. So for example, someone who may be used to doing batch reporting or batch verification, you know, walking them through incremental verification that we use in software can help them think about how we're doing verification on our systems and hardware on the hardware side, because they'll start to understand those concepts. But there are, in each of these domains, for our product, there's very, very different ways of doing things, often for very, very good reason. So for example, for mechanical design, there's a bias for kind of big upfront planning because you've got expensive tooling. You can't go around and iterate on an expensive tool every month because you'll break the bank. So so that careful planning, you know, thinking twice through stuff is a very, very good asset to have, right? It doesn't mean you do that in software, but it means that you should at least enforce cautious planning in software when we're doing our release planning. Similarly, if you can decompose the mechanical tasks down into something like 3D prints that can be done much faster, you know, you can get some feedback earlier and you can start implementing agile practices in mechanical teams. There's an advantage in that. But it's just a background note. It's something we've seen again and again, that particularly where you're trying to breed an agile culture, is that you run into these types of things and there's a good reason for them. But as you're starting to collaborate across projects, you just want to be explicit about who's coming from where, what the perspective is, and then how you can sort of leverage that. So generally speaking, the software teams will move fast and break things, but they'll have very good test coverage so they can understand when they break things. And by the time it gets to production, things are working very, very well. So they tend to iterate an awful lot more. And we've tried to move that into other areas of the design as well, be it compliance, manufacturing, mechanical design. And it means that the organization isn't static, locked into what they're doing. Our processes should be able to change as quickly as our products are changing. That's it. So I think that's our team. So a lot of these ideas are kind of evolved through collaborative teams that we have, system team and software team, but there's a lot of very good people in Bluedrop. So that's it. Thank you.
Great, Gavin. Thanks very much. When I think back to the early days when yourself and the two other guys came in to the iHub, and we didn't even have the extension at that stage. It was only a small original building. And I look now back at your presentation, I just say, wow, it is just incredible. I mean, and you've covered it incredibly well, and I want to thank you for that. And of course, to hear about the 40 staff, you know, I mean, that's what it's about from, you know, from Enterprise Ireland's point of view and our point of view. And to hear that there's, you know, actual devices you know, shipped out to the US. That's what we're here for. That's what it's about, you know, and that's what keeps us going. So look, I mean, you've covered an awful lot of things. You covered the software classification, the life cycle process. You covered the safety and quality for the development, covered other standards and regulations. You gave us an idea of the software, the workflows. You talked about a number of different tools and high-level processes and agile projects with the 2-week sprints and the low-level development workflows. And you gave us some key takeaways. And what I really liked as well, because we're all here, the people sitting in front of you and the people online, I hope you're taking note of some of these, is that there's a lot of other tips that you gave in relation to just the book, in relation to other software tools that ye have used, which are really invaluable. And I want to thank you for that. So well done, another bull of us. So our final speaker today, Paul McCarthy, and founder and Chief Operating Officer in Full Health Medical. Paul, thanks for coming along this morning. So Full Health Medical is in the area of health screening software, but particularly built by doctors. I'm not going to say any more on that because Paul will tell you a bit about it. Full Health Medical was a client in the Mayo iHub with Maria for several years. And it's a software as a service medtech company, and essentially it's providing full health as a service. So please put your hands together for Paul.
Thanks, George. Great to be here. So my plan today is to talk to you about, just to explain what Full Health is, because it's a product, a software as a service product that we license to customers. We don't do bespoke software, very different to what Raymond said. It's not a medical device company, so it's a pure software as a service, but we're in the medtech area. And I want to share with you then the learnings as well that we had over on the journey to date. So it's this machine here. So as George said, our product is really about making preventative healthcare accessible, right? And what I'm going to talk a lot about is scaling. The core piece of what we do is about scaling the doctor, allowing just large volumes of medicals to take place in a very automated way. And what we provide is an infrastructure, a software infrastructure that allows an organization to take that off the shelf and start delivering services, medical services. Usually it's in the health check area. During COVID, it was for the return of COVID tests to hundreds of thousands of people when they wanted, you know, companies were out there doing COVID testing. People needed to get results back immediately and have that have a way to automate that and integrate into laboratories. So this slide here just explains back to that core of scaling medical expertise, where we're really, when we think about healthcare, the challenge of there aren't enough doctors, there aren't enough healthcare personnel. The estimate, I think, is 30 million, a shortage of 30 million worldwide by 2030. And really what Full Health is about is trying to say, look at how can we help the doctor to scale in a not in a one-to-one relationship, but in a one to very many relationships. The doctor can do far more. The areas we work in then where our product is used is private healthcare. So 2 examples there would be, say, Circle Health in the UK, network of 30 hospitals. Full Health is used for 250 corporate, large multinational companies who will be clients of theirs, like Sainsbury's, Tesco, etc., for medicals. And a local example here in Ireland would be, say, Cormarket. And so for Christmas, we just completed a project with them for the entire police force in Ireland. So 4,000 medicals. How many doctors? 1 doctor, you know, in the space of like a couple of weeks, you know. So that's the type of scale we're talking about. And then similarly, we have a platform which can be used, you know, for, say, delivering services in the pharmacy, whether it's flu vaccines or whether it's health checks again in the pharmacy, or even into the area of chronic disease management, where they want to bring people more into the pharmacy to build more of a community relationship with patients and individuals. Health surveillance. Again, same platform, same product, but where people are in an environment where they're exposed to risk, e.g. noise, or let's say even it can be oftentimes, let's say in pharmaceuticals, it can be actual other drugs. So they're monitoring staff to see if there's any change in that process, and employers want back then a letter of, is the person fit to work? Is everything in control? So it's around risk assessment. So our health survey, we have a product that works in that area. Again, it's just all built on the same common engine of full health. And then a relatively newer product then for us is the area of home testing. So we get queries, let's say, where someone wants to go into home testing. So if you can put a kit in a box, send it out to people, and a lot of health services are doing this. Even there's a huge one in the NHS at the minute where they want to move the whole NHS health check to home testing, and they're dividing up the tender into, look at what is the price per box for this kit, and then what is the price of the digital pathway to support it. So we can give organizations that type of out-of-the-box infrastructure. So I'm going to talk about the journey of the company. So Full Health's been around a long time, and going right back to 2008. So I started this company with my wife Anne, who's an A&E consultant and a GP, and I used to work in public sector at the time, out the road here in Athenry with Teagasc, and every time I'd come home to be talking about, look at the health of farmers and how they didn't look after their health and how really they didn't understand it. So I said, look at, why don't you write some articles about it? So we had articles in the newspaper and Farmers Journal and all these people, educating people how they can control their own health. So I became fascinated with this area. And because in Teagasc, I used to work in both on some of the business side and on the IT side in Teagasc. We decided that, look, really we should do something about this to try and bring this idea to life. So and I'll come to this in the end, but basically, who you're on the journey with in business matters an awful lot. If you can get the right people that you're on this mission, this is not a short journey, no matter how short you're going to think it's going to be. So first who, and then, not necessarily where, but what you're going to do afterwards. Hewlett Packard is a great example. First of all, they were going to build a medical device company medical products before they started building computers. So first who, then what. So we started this company. We built a software engine. We thought we could improve the process by which medicals were being done in the community much better than anyone else. We started delivering medicals to companies. We also we licensed that out to other people who might use it, so we didn't keep it in-house. And that allowed us to, over many years, to build, I suppose, a framework of what we wanted to do, build these interpretations that I'm going to talk a little bit about to automate to scale up the doctor. And then in the last 2-3 years, probably 2.5 years ago now, we really said, look, let's really focus just on software as a service and scaling that, because there are lots of healthcare providers out there, and if we can become really good at that, then we have a much better company. So under the hood, just to talk a little bit about this. So under the hood, we have all these modules, we just call them modules. So blood pressure might be a module, cholesterol, and we have about 70 of these modules that we maintain. They're all maintained by consultants, medical consultants, where they'll review the latest guidelines, update those modules. And really what we're doing here in this example here is, like, say, iron, where you've got 4 different variables, 2 blood tests, and answers to questions. And from this simple module here, where you've got transfer and saturation as the laboratory results, and the answers to questions and version results, there can be 60 different outputs for the individual might get back. So it's all, let's say, mostly between the interplay of ferritin and transfer and saturation in terms of the output, but we're trying to give, like, say, what a doctor would say to that person in any of these different combinations. There's no AI in there at this stage because we don't want any probability. Now it'll be interesting because AI is obviously a huge topic, and it will come into other parts of the product in terms of administration. We're looking at areas where it can really help, but there's no AI in this section of the product at this stage or planned for it at this stage. Again, talking about Raymond mentioned the risk levels under the AI Act and so on. Then just the product itself. So what does it allow someone to do? So if you took our product off the shelf, you can configure this program. What do you want to deliver, whether it's in a pharmacy environment, a home test environment, it allows you to configure and build the whole product. You can set up our online appointments for different types of workflows. You can have online payments if it's in a private healthcare environment, or optional extra payments. And then crucially, obviously protecting privacy rights like for GDPR or consents for various programs. It allows efficient data collection through the experience in terms of registration, questionnaires, all the consents, and then collecting physical examination data, and also then integration with any laboratory very easily off the shelf. That's actually laboratories aren't all the same. They can have different reference ranges for different medical tests. So we have we built this in, let's say, as part of the whole engine, dynamic ranges which can adapt to the HL7 messages that are coming in, and then the results will produce the correct interpretation based on the analysis. And then what we do is so that no matter when we don't automate to the extent that it goes automatically by that patient. Someone of a medical, usually a doctor, someone has to review and look at those results, glance at them before they go out. So where it's there and they can edit those reports as they see fit. But we produce them to a high standard, so generally they don't have to do very much with them. And again, like as the example showed earlier, it's all about automated medical outcome reporting. So we produce nice medical reports that the individual can understand. And the IP then is really replicating that thought process of a doctor, what they would do, looking at all those parameters. Of course, we know in today's world that the doctor just has no time, can't get an appointment. So it's really trying to scale, again, that doctor piece. We have an app then that can be, so this isn't under the Full Health brand. You'll rarely see Full Health out there. It's usually under someone else's brand name. So the app, when people use it, it goes to that brand. So again, good user experience, a lot of work gone into that, remodeling it to make it a really good experience. And then finally, this corporate dashboard, and we're advancing this at the minute with a large project for Enterprise Ireland. So if you think about who the payers, the end payers are, in a lot of these cases that we have, it's usually, let's say, those large corporate clients, and they're paying for a service. Oftentimes these services can be very expensive. They're saying, well, what is the, what's going on in my cohort, my population, given that wellness has gone up the charts with ESG and so on. And so we're building out a whole entity for the corporate to kind of get access to be able to invite people, upload cohorts of their own employee base, to cut out all this spreadsheets floating around the place because they can't do it anymore with employee names and so on. So they need a way to have access to our application, bring in all the names of people who will be eligible for it, manage eligibility in terms of roles and rank, because different people can have different entitlements. And then thirdly, also to invite the cohort in on maybe even a recurring basis. And finally, of course, producing the analytics, aggregated analytics of the population, what's going on, is my population, my health getting better or not for different parameters. So it's putting real data on that type of information. This is just, again, some product stuff. I'm going to skip through it, but it's really about, showing again some, just to give you a visual of the app. We configure the program, the end user receives an invite, inputs their information at home. Then there's usually some sort of medical appointment. Obviously, that's not the case for home testing, but where there is, it'll organize all of that in a streamlined workflow. And laboratory results come back, reports are produced, and then you have the aggregated information for the payer, let's say, at the end. So just in terms of medical device, why are we've had various discussions along the way, and we always keep an open mind on it. But in terms of the medical device regulation, we're not a medical device for these reasons. A is, when it comes to diagnosis of disease, let's say here, using an example like HbA1c, often that would be a common test used. So we might tell someone they have an elevated HbA1c, but we're not making a diagnosis at that point. They're directed back to their doctor and so forth for it. In terms of prevention of disease, even though our product is a very good preventative healthcare app, we're not actually we're reducing risk, we're giving people more autonomy over their health, but we're not preventing an actual disease. Monitoring disease and monitoring, let's say if you think of people who come back year on year, they are able to see their trends and their health over time in a very accurate and patient-friendly way, but we are producing a snapshot in time as opposed to we're not monitoring a disease. And so some of the stuff that is the new projects that are coming our way through collaborations could move us that way. So these might become factors where it'll bring us to a medical device, that component. Again, prediction of disease, we're not predicting disease or a specific disease, and because we're not diagnosing, we're not giving a prognosis. And then finally, last two, it's not intended for treatment or alleviation. So, and then finally, just regarding the MDR regulation regarding provision of information through in vitro examination of specimens divided from the human body. In summary, we're reporting information, but we're not performing any examination or laboratory investigation. And then the range, even though there's a range of laboratory tests in there, where there's no change to the blood tubes or laboratory interpretation. So if the laboratory says the result is normal, we'll stick to within that. We're not adapting or changing it in any way. And finally, all results, regardless, are looked at by a clinician before they're released to the individual. So this is the bit, I guess, that's most relevant maybe here that can help. I want to give a good overview of the product and the journey we're on. We have a team of smaller team than Gavin's, about 15 people, 10 of those engineers in the company at this stage. We're now on the proper scale up journey. So you'll see a picture down here in the bottom right. We're over in Dubai at Arab Health, which supported by Enterprise Ireland 2 weeks ago. We're in Birmingham next week. We're really out in the market. We have huge opportunities coming from in the Africa region for people where they don't have that doctor, as opposed to the let's say the Western world, where there's more funding around, or people can control their own health, but where they really need this and benefit from it would be some of the developing countries. And we have a lot of activity in those regions right now. So in terms of considerations, as mentioned earlier, first who, then what, is on your team. Validating that idea all the time to try and see, look at, am I on the, and the reason for who's on that team with you is you might need to change your model. In the case of full health, it's interesting because going right back to day one, it was always about that interpretation and empowering people. It hasn't changed very little. In fact, it has become more central to look at how do we really do that at scale, but the whole concept hasn't changed. But if you have the right people on your team, you can adapt to the changing environment and keep validating until you get that product market fit. What is it that do I really have product market fit in terms of, are there customers that will buy it? What is the market size? As opposed to just having general stuff of reports, about the market size. I was looking at one last night, digital health is supposed to go to, I forget the number of us, I have it in our board paper, but it's quite astronomical in terms of what's going on at the minute. But you have to identify actual customers that will buy your product or that would have a need for it. And then getting from your first customer to not getting caught away with all of the other distractions in business, but always focusing on the customer. We do customer account meetings. We really look after our customers, talk to them every month. Are we meeting their demands? Or is there an issue with the release, that something they weren't aware of? We do feature updates, really trying to keep those customers all the time close to us. And finally, then Gavin touched on some of the tools. I just want to get more into the nuts and bolts of it. Here is the kind of toolkit or the playbook we use in full health to help us. So for internal communications, we use kind of Slack and Microsoft Teams with Office and SharePoint. For documentation, we use Atlassian, Confluence. So we run the entire company on what's interesting about full health at this stage is the company is run very heavily on policy. So everything is documented. And I know Gavin mentioned that the ISO 27001 is one of the policies. While we're not a medical device, we have been ISO 27001 for the last, we're in our second cycle of it, so it must be year 4. And the last 3 years, we've had no findings in the audit against us. In fact, the auditor compared us, said, look, we can only compare the likes of Vodafone to your organization in terms of level of audit and control around information security. So we do an incredible job on that. And if you think about those 275, or even in the Irish market, probably 500 corporates that are on full health right now, the first thing that happens is, where's my employee data? And these healthcare providers will have to do a risk assessment and do a data processing, produce a report for why it's secure, and they generally tend to look to us for that. And so that's been a really crucial area for us. In terms of Atlassian, so all of our processes, all of our internal processes, everything sits on Confluence. There are other products like out there like Notion and so on as well, but it's just the one we use. But each line in that standard is documented, the control, and then examples of how we support that control. And our policy isn't something we've taken off the shelf. It's something we live and breathe all the time, whether it's a USB sticks, no external media devices, or a BY bring your own device policy, which we don't permit, all of those things. And then we use for finance, then we use Xero. They're like obviously QuickBooks and that, but it's been a really good solution. And then every week we have a weekly finance meeting to kind of go through it. Our finance function isn't core to what we do, so we have an outsourced function that does all of that. It's not in-house. So then for customer service, we found HubSpot to be a really good product in terms of let's say all the customer communications. Not just, people think of it sometimes for marketing and sales. We have a marketing agency, digital agency, that helps us with our SEO and all of that. But we use it for the customer service, for tracking all the tickets. And we have and then tickets will go through a process of a new ticket waiting on contact. Can we close it? Is it waiting on medical or waiting on development for something that we can solve? So, and that feeds then into our software development cycle, for which we use Jira. It's another product in Atlassian, and very similar to what Gavin said about, having very strict requirements around, when tickets, is there enough information for developers to pick up that ticket? Or product manager will kick that back to make sure the tickets are detailed enough for them to work on, and we educate the team on it as well. And then obviously a software repository, GitHub, but we use other things for like Sentry and Circle CI and Circle, and that for on the tech side as well. So we have a full documented software development cycle for how we do software with different environments, testing, development, staging, and then release to production. And then finally, onto the people side of it. So, if you're growing a company, hiring is really important. So for developers, we'll have test challenges that are relevant to the types of processes. We'll try and have good hiring processes in terms of maybe speaking to suitable candidates and then shortlisting and so on. And then here, I'm just mentioning 2 products. We use Bamboo for our HR. And then we also use Okta, which is a single sign-on product, and identity management. There are other ones out there. So that allows us to do very good onboarding. So as soon as a new joiner is coming in, we can onboard them. Once they're set up on Bamboo and they're assigned to, say, engineering, that assigns them all the relevant software. And then that also means that offboarding can be completed. So the auditors absolutely love it from an ISO perspective, because we can demonstrate that there's no room for error, and we can show all the logs. Everyone who joins getting 30, 60, 90 days plans, and assigned a mentor or someone who's going to work with them on that. One-to-ones in the company as well, then in terms of team and how they're going and feedback. And then company-wide, we have daily stand-ups, both an operations team every day in the morning, and a development stand-up with also the at this stage still the whole team. So we keep it all quite tight and a lot of communication. Like our team, we have our largest offices in Brazil, where a lot of the engineers are based there, and then we have Romania, UK, and Ireland as well, with the growing team here. And then we do physical meetups, where we'll fly everyone to meet together for sessions to get good collaboration going a couple of times a year. So we've no physical office at this place, this stage. So then finally, you know, what I would say is I'm taking this from a book, Good to Great, but really it's around a culture, what I say is a culture of discipline, where, you know, it's trying to have that among our team, as I mentioned earlier, all the policies, everything's on Confluence. Everything is very transparent from a company perspective. We share our board papers back with the team, relevant components of that as much as we can. And it's really about this team we have now. You know, I call them, they're self-motivated, which is really important. Disciplined people who engage in disciplined thought and can take disciplined action. And that's kind of the core of this Good to Great book. And you want them to have responsibility versus jobs, where they can really, you know, having the right people on the bus, and then and it linking back to getting a lot of, you know, moving the company forward. And the 3 circles here are taken out of this Good to Great book, where, you know, the team must be very passionate about what it's doing. And then what can you be the best in the world at? You know, you have to try and find that one thing that you can be the best in the world at. And then do you have an economic engine? As I mentioned, in our one, we have recurring or revenue can be quite boring in terms of, you know, monthly software license fees. It's like almost like a phone bundle package, and where customers are on a model and they're in that for typically three to 5 years, you know. So you've got this revenue economic engine which fuels the company, and then, you know, what can you be the best in the world at? It doesn't mean you're the best at it today, but we would believe in Full Health Worker, we can be the best at helping really to scale that doctor. And that's why Jim Collins talks about this hedgehog approach, you know, sticking to one thing and doing it well, as opposed to his other ones, the fox, who might change direction and try and outsmart the hedgehog every time, but he calls it the hedgehog effect anyway. So look, that's a bit of a fly in the wall. Hopefully it augments the other talks from Ray and from Gavin as well, you know. So okay, thanks a lot. Good. Okay.
Great, thanks, Paul. And look, you've given us a very good background on Full Health Medical, and indeed how it helps doctors to scale, which is an interesting angle. You know, and that your wife, A&E consultant and GP, involved deeply in the company and developing the system and the software, which is very important. Great to see that you're in 30 hospitals in the UK, huge number of large corporate clients. And then you gave the example of somewhere where there was 4,000 medicals, I think, and only 1 doctor. So it just goes to show what the leverage and what can happen. But then you went on to talk about that this is a huge journey. It's not short, and the team is critical in that. You talked about some of the modules involved in the product, and each of them look at a specific area in a blood test. And you gave some examples on the iron module, and then the patient app, which is white labeled, so you don't know it's Full Health Medical maybe when you're looking at it, but it might be behind the skin. And then you talked about the corporate dashboard. In fact, I think you Full Health Medical got the Agile funding there, did they? Yeah, from AI, which is a really super piece of funding that it's great to see a client from an incubator going really forward and being able to leverage that down the road. Then you talked about the workflows and that the fact that it's not a medical device and why it's not a medical device, which is slightly different to earlier. And then the autonomy of the health and the monitoring of the products. And you gave some software development considerations and tools and the product market fit. And finally, then you talked about the people management and the tools and the culture. And indeed, anyone who hasn't read that book, you need to buy it. Jim Collins, Good to Great, read it years ago, brilliant. So, and it's also interesting to see the team like Brazil, Romania, UK. You know, it's super. So another bull bus for Paul there, please. Now, technically, I know we're over time because we sort of started about 10 minutes late, but we're going to run on here, and I hope that there's a number of people online there that can stay with us, because we're going to start some Q&A. And I'm actually, Torlock is going to manage that with the microphone there. And I'm actually going to start with Pádraig, because Pádraig is from Lero, Business Development Manager. And we're going to put you on the spot there for a minute while the rest of the questions are, if you're coming in, just to say a word or two on Lero and what it does, because I think it's very important.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Do you want to use the mic there?
Million. Well done to Ray and Gavin and to Paul as well on their presentations. They're exceptionally interesting, and I've taken a lot from it. I suppose Lero is the Science Foundation Ireland Centre for Software Research. So we're working across 12 universities, of which ATU is a member. We have about over 120, 130 projects with companies. We partner with 4 of the top 10 technology companies in the world, the likes of NVIDIA, Airbus, ARM, Google, Meta, etc. We've a load of projects with Valeo, which is formerly Connacht Electronics, in visual systems, vision systems that they have for autonomous vehicles. And we've also a lot of stuff done with Logitech, the keyboard and the mouse manufacturers for an esports. And then you'd probably think, why are we talking about health and esports? If you look at some of the work that's been done in Lero in the Medtech area, it actually started off as part of an esports project looking at movement of mouse, movement of joystick, movement, visual acuity, and awareness on a platform. And they've taken actually the workings from that esports research, and they're actually training laparoscopic surgeons on how to do coast-to-coast operations on the Da Vinci machine over in the US. So someone in New York operating on someone in San Francisco. So they're using that taking from that and using it. Working with the likes of Carlin in Ireland here, their local operation, the Bon Secours Hospital, Johnson & Johnson, Salasso, SQS, Bluebridge, Portable Medical Technology companies, and helping them to our projects as well, and look at kind of a more longer term research element for their software within their medical technology. We did a very big project with Bon Secours, looking at their theatre and bed management practices, and then also with another Bon Secours project in relation to hip replacements, and using sonar and how the reverberations of a hip replacement can actually help to make sure that you're hitting the right spot to get the hip into the proper joint. So using the software behind that and the technology behind that to help with those types of projects. Lero, as I said, we're based across 12 universities. In Ireland, we have about 300 researchers, over 100 million funding, over 100 projects. Some of our projects range from 40, 50,000 up to 6.5 million of funding. We operate on a co-funding model. We have 3 different funding models, I should say. One is the European funding, where any of the members would actually be a net taker from European funding. Locally, which is my area, we look at co-funding, where the net costs of the project would be shared 50-50 with the company. So if the net cost of the project was 100K for a 4-year PhD student to work on a long-term project for a company, we would put in half the funding, and the company would put in half the funding. And then we also have a fully funded model whereby a company could come in and pay the full economic cost of the project and work with that particular university. So we're a little bit university agnostic, whereby I work across the 12 universities and I try to bring in the right person for the particular project with the company. But as I said, ATU is a member and supporter of Lero. So I'm happy to talk to anyone that would like to discuss potential for projects. There is some great people working here in ATU, working on obviously like the medical device, in the medical device areas. So happy to talk to anyone about that today.
Great.
I do have a question though for I suppose all 3 of the panel, if if you want me to.
Yeah,
to
so
kick
that's
off
great.
and
We'll
kick
thanks for
off on
that.
question, yeah.
And if you want to start off the questions, and we'll throw out a
Yeah.
few more then. Yeah, thanks.
I suppose everybody's looking at AI, and AI is a topic. I suppose that's kind of it's something that sticks to a wall. AI, it's such a broad area, and it's one of the things that Ray actually said at the start about using AI, using AI about the writing of code and that kind of area. From the experience we've had so far in Lero, it's people don't trust nearly the AI code that's generated yet, because like things like ChatGPT still do hallucinations all the time. So in its writing code, I did a test myself on ChatGPT last week when I asked it to find or solve a maths problem, and it gave me the incorrect answer. So there's still that kind of human intervention that's required. But to each of you, I suppose, where do you see that AI piece? And again, it's to your own business. Where do you see that AI becoming more involved in your business, and how do you plan for that long-term research into that area in your own organization?
Sure, maybe we start with Ray then. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I suppose most of the people we talked about AI, the AI lives in a PowerPoint. It's not real. The projects on AI that we're involved in is gathering the data set, and that's to train the algorithm. So that's kind of where we're at, and we're working with companies where they're doing an implant, they're gathering the data, and over a product development cycle, they'll eventually have an algorithm that will be dynamically tuned and trained over time. I think the problems are, I suppose it depends on what's the AI you're using. Is it you're going to build your own validated data set that you're going to use and control quite well, or are you into public data sets that may have bias and all that consideration? So it's all early days and future thinking. Yeah, there's probably instances where people are using it for, I would say, logistical reasons behind the scenes, but again, it's about how you validate that and understand it. But yeah, that's as much as we're seeing of it, really. I would say there's more machine learning efforts going on rather than what you classify as AI.
And Gavin, do you want to just add anything to that? And then we'll come to Paul.
Yeah, so I think a caveat for anybody that generally is like English is often isn't enough, like on a development team, and then even for that. So like AI is just a class of solutions, obviously. So there's like large language models where you're maybe generating text or code for developers, or there's machine learning algorithms, which would be more in line with types of products that we're releasing, and we've got our own data set. So mostly what we're concerned about when we talk about AI from a product point of view for our own image data sets, we're about to release something, is training. So it's a very simple process. We collect data, we annotate it, we label it, and then we save it. And that's the vast majority of the work that we will have to do, is doing that well. And it's a very, very simple thing. The types of controls we have in place are normal. For opportunities for things like large language models, what we've said to our developers is go and understand how this can help you work faster, right? Because ultimately, in a lot of cases, it's just about saving time. So AI is a way for you to get from someone doing something for 30 minutes to it being 2 minutes. So our imaging algorithms do that. It's an automation. Or coding large language models do that. That's the value. Absolutely don't trust them until you can verify and validate. So how do you know it works is something you should ask anything that's coming into your systems, or anything your developers are producing. If they can write the test that shows it works, great, but that doesn't go away with AI. So it's a tool to save time. Generally, if we're talking broadly, specifically how you implement it is, have people go experiment with it, understand where the opportunities are, but understand then what acceptable is and what working is, and then you'll figure it out from there. But it's very mundane. I spent 3 hours this week annotating images. Most of AI and most of the value in AI is a very mundane process of saying, we're interested in this thing, we're not interested in that as far as training goes, but that's where the value is. And for me, it means that I'm looking at hundreds of our images every day in a lot of detail. And as I'm doing that, I'm understanding what the next suite of algorithms might be. So so I think be specific, understand what you need from it. It's probably about saving time. How much time is it saving you is the...
Great. Yeah, thanks, Gavin. And Paul, do you want to add anything to that?
Not much really. Again, just to iterate. Yeah, it's the same where developers can use it to save time, but you still need your processes in place to, peer review how software gets released into the code base. So we're obviously all companies have to keep abreast of it in terms of its development, and we have at the core of what we do in terms of algorithms and medical side of it, we're strictly staying away from AI, but of course we're evaluating it everywhere else.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. Any question from anyone in the audience here that want to ask anything? And don't be afraid, just if you have any question of any kind or any online question, Turlock, that you want to put forward there?
Yeah, there's just from the online audience, just two general questions. One is in relation to cybersecurity, and Raymond, you mentioned that as well, the standards and adhering to the standards, and looking at I suppose doing the risk assessment. The question is there any as part of the standard, do you have to demonstrate that you actually tried, or somebody, an external organization, actually tried to hack the actual device itself?
Yes, we have a procedure by which the penetration testing is done, and then that's followed by the external company that we use. So.
Okay, so you essentially have to try and see, can you break it and get maybe external company to do that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I suppose hard to do it internally because you've the internal bias for that. So.
Yeah, well, that's very true. Yeah. Yeah.
So annual third-party penetration testing is a requirement. So it's HIPAA, for example, there's not a certification.
You might just give him that mic there, so because there's a few people there online as well. Yeah.
So if you're in the US, your data is subject to HIPAA. So you won't have, unlike Europe, where you have to have an ISO cert maybe and receive your cert before you can put your product on the market. You can't handle data until you're HIPAA compliant. It's not a certified process though. So internally you have to check, are you compliant? But one of the things that you can do, and you have to do, is ensure that you do at least annual penetration testing on your systems. Other things that are prudent to do are things like load testing. There's very standard practices, but at a minimum, third-party penetration testing is a requirement for somebody to do. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Great.
Just came up in one tender and we looked at are your penetration testers Crest certified? Okay. So we use a Crest certified company, and then their online portal, or they have an online tool which does the testing every month, or you can run it as frequently as you want, and then you complement that with the manual penetration test as well, just to keep everyone happy.
Great. So you can see the link there with the tenders even, and how important it is. So Turlock, the next question, we might try and capture that as well.
Just the other question is suppose really more for yourself, Gavin. It's just there's a new EU regulation in terms of its consumer devices. If the actual device breaks, that the person can opt to get it fixed. And is that something that your device would fall under?
So we're operating in the US at the moment. It's target market, I suppose. So I don't know is the short answer to that. If we're in Europe, I know that one of the things that drove us to the US, because at the time for medical device companies, there was a shift from going Europe first to switching very quickly as the FDA kind of streamlined process to moving to the US. So we follow that. What I would say is Europe is very fragmented. I mean, from in the integration point of view, from these new regulations that are coming down along the line, the update to the MDR was very, very slow. We didn't know where that was going to land. So we couldn't afford to consume that level of uncertainty in terms of going to market. So I'm not sure on that specific one, the degree of overlap, or whether or not there'll be an alignment with that directive with something like the medical device directive, if there's aspects of it that are harmonized, a little bit like the AI directive, how that feeds into MDR regulations. Normally you sit under one or the other. So I don't know, it's not something I'm familiar with, Charlotte, at the moment yet.
Okay, great. Anyone here want to ask anything else or any question of any kind? If you're not, we're going to bring it to a close. So I want to thank a few people for today, because as always, there's a bit of work in planning and managing and pulling it together. So I want to thank Turlock and Michelle specifically for doing that, for contacting the people and for getting the event together today. I want to really thank the three speakers, so Raymond, Gavin and Paul, again, for giving up your time. But I can tell you that what you're giving back here to the iHub clients and the people on the online, on the audience, is really, really important and critical for people that are trying to develop and build software devices in the medtech space. And finally, I want to thank the attendees, and I know we have lost some of them there online, but I want to thank you for taking the time out as well, because we're trying to run events that would help the clients and really add value. And I think without question today has done it. So a big bullet bus, and we'll leave it at that.